Thank you for joining us for the first STEAM Bytes for the 2021-2022 school year. I'm Jaspreet Sunda, the STEAM coordinator for the Division of Instruction. I'm joined by my partner, Jerry Song, who's the other STEAM coordinator for the Division of Instruction. Mariam Wright Edleman said, "You can't be what you can't see." Our goal for STEAM Bytes is for students to see themselves in our speakers so they can become inspired and develop knowledge about careers of the future. I would like to hand it over to Jerry so he can introduce today's speaker.
Thank you, Jaspreet. Before we begin, I just wanted to talk a little about STEAM. STEAM is more than just the sum of the subjects indicated in its acronym: science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. It's about connecting what happens in the real world with the learning in the classroom. In the real world, seldom do we separate our day into the different skills or knowledge sets of our profession, but rather we are solving real world problems and using whatever skill or knowledge is necessary to solve them. When the lack of a skill or knowledge is encountered, we take the time to develop these skills or grow our knowledge. In the same way, STEAM is about giving students real world problems that are relevant to themselves, their community, and the world. In the process of solving these problems, students find themselves asking questions, and the pursuit of those answers is where true lifelong learning occurs. LA Unified STEAM Bytes was developed to give students an opportunity to hear the STEAM journey of professionals in the field. Today, we are excited to feature Brandon Rodriguez from NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratories. He is a former research scientist himself and was and still is a science teacher. He's now working at JPL in the K-12 education department, developing lessons for students and leading professional development trainings for educators. As Brandon shares his STEAM journey, I hope our students are able to see themselves in his struggle and how he overcame them. In every STEAM Bytes, our speakers share their struggles and how integral they were in their STEAM journeys. We hope our students see that the success of our featured speakers is built on a foundation of struggles and even failures that had to be endured and overcome through perseverance and grit. We hope our students can see themselves in the lives of our STEAM Bytes speakers. Thank you, Brandon, for joining us today to share your STEAM journey with our students.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Really, really excited to be here. And, I'm as passionate about STEAM as you can get. I've had the pleasure of an incredible career in science. And I'm really excited to kind of walk you guys through a little bit about what it took to get there, and really to highlight the diversity of science careers that are available. When I talk about my past and hopefully a little bit about my future, it's really incredible to know that we can bounce in between these things. We don't make a commitment to one area of science. When you open a door in STEM or in STEAM, you really open up many doors simultaneously. So I'm actually here in the Jet Propulsion Lab in the semblance of an office as we kind of come back from working remotely. So I'm really excited to be back. This is where the magic happens. And so I wanted to kind of show you guys some slides about how it is that I ended up in this magnificent place that I promise you is much more magnificent than this unpacked office would appear. So I'll share some slides with you guys. So you guys should be able to see this now. And this is the Curiosity rover that you're looking at, just to kind of kick us off. This is the rover that landed back in 2012. We've since landed another more modern rover that looks very similar, but is 10 years its junior, and incredibly new technological developments. And it is driving around Mars, the Perseverance and Curiosity rovers, looking at rock samples and looking for signs of ancient life. I would be remiss if I didn't open up to say that to the teachers who are watching, I hope that you guys will take a look at the NASA education website, which is chock full of activities. It's here at jpl.nasa.gov/edu. And this is where you can find activities based on my research, the research of all of the scientists here, and written for you and your kids. So long after today, please engage in this stuff and get a chance to bring awesome science to your classroom. So when I was asked to talk a little bit about my journey, that really meant I was going to have to swallow my pride and find the most embarrassing photos of me in my youth. So let's just dive right in, and I'll deal with the embarrassment later. I was effectively born to a Venezuelan family. My father's from Caracas. I immigrated to Canada and then to the United States as a young child. I guess I was 14 about when I got to the United States, 13, 14. I have a little sister. You can see us here on the left, rocking those really great low-income family bowl cuts, right? Haircuts are cheap when you do it that way. And I actually lost my parents very, very early on. And as a product of that, certainly had a lot of kind of unresolved issues, let's say. My old teachers went through a lot. There's something very karmically satisfying about me being in a classroom after all I put my teachers through. So losing my family, it was just me and my sister. My sister is my only blood relative that I know. And we were here in this country that was not exactly hospitable. I was really excited about the idea of the United States. I was excited about so many really nerdy things. I was very dorky early on. Dungeons and Dragons, loved it. Magic the Gathering, to see that card game, love it. I also had never seen American football, and I landed in the United States in Madison, Wisconsin. So the Green Bay Packers are my team forever. And that was just like incredible to see this wild sport of these, kind of in its heyday. I think really the most transformative time for me really took place in high school. I was bouncing around a lot. There was no city that I needed to be in as an individual. I really lost touch with my sister pretty early on, although we've since reconnected, which I'll talk more about. But high school was probably the most, really shaping era for me. And that's because I was in this town, Las Cruces, New Mexico. I graduated high school in 2001, and I went to a very, very bad school. We'll just call it what it is. I'm so sorry for any of my old teachers that are watching, but this school did not hold students accountable. It was not focusing on science in a lot of ways. And as a result, my grades were very good. My attitude was very bad. And I didn't see a lot of future. A lot of us didn't. I think of my graduating class of 320, only 4 of us left the state for college, right? So going to the next step, leaving town, was not a thing we envisioned. And that clearly kind of shaped an environment around us. I didn't have a home at the time. So I was actually very, very fortunate. My good friend to this day, Josh Silver, who's in the photo on the top, took me in. He was a few years older than me. He had an apartment, and he gave me a place to stay. And between him and one incredible teacher at the school, Steve Ewing, I can trace back how my life was rerouted. I would have gone a direction that so many other students at that school went, were it not for the care of a good friend and the time and attention from an amazing teacher. Mr. Ewing saw my attitude. He saw what I was going through, and he channeled it into something positive. So when I was skipping school, when I was getting into trouble that need not be mentioned, he challenged me he challenged my pride. He challenged my youthful ego and turned it into intellect. And for that, I'm eternally grateful. He very, very wisely, effectively told me, you know, you don't want to come to class, fine, I'll cut you a deal. No homework, no tests if you enter the science Olympics for the state, and just try. And I thought, great, I don't want to even come to this class, what a deal. And it wasn't until many years later I realized I studied more to do well in the science Olympics than I was ever doing for the homework or the exams. And that really just later resonated with me, and I saw what he had done. And it was just such an incredible teacher move to put me where I am today. I think because of him, I was able to get into a good college. I went to Vanderbilt University. I majored in chemistry and philosophy. As much as I love philosophy, I did want a job. So I decided to go the chemistry route professionally. But this too ended up being the second very transformative moment for me. I had spent my life in a little bit more of a low income situation where, you know, we were working. I needed to find rent. I needed to find food. And all of a sudden, I'm at a school that at the time was $44,000 a year. And I don't even want to guess what it is now, right? This is 20 years ago. So I kind of had a culture shock. First of all, I didn't feel academically prepared because so many of my teachers back at my high school were just kind of throwing my grade around. So going to a top tier school left me very intimidated. And then also I was around a very, very predominantly white, affluent community. I knew I was never speaking a word of Spanish again, that's for sure. So it was very odd to say things like, oh, you should do better on the test or you're going to lose your scholarship. And a student would say, my parents wrote a check for all 4 years. We just wrote a check for $180,000. And I like that number is just unfathomable to me. I, meanwhile, again, very, very fortunately, you can see on the third bullet, I worked through high school working at Sonic Drive-In for $5.15 an hour. If I had not received scholarship to go to Vanderbilt at 44,000, again, you don't have to be very good at math. It takes a lot of 5.15 an hour to get to 44,000. So if it weren't for scholarship, I wouldn't have been able to go. And even with that scholarship, in my mind, you needed food, you needed money, you needed to be safe and secure. So I was still working. I was still hustling all the time. I worked 2 jobs all the time. I worked one in food because I wanted a source of something to eat. I was just never sure where that next meal was coming. So I worked in the dining hall or I worked at Subway. And then the second one, I always worked a job in science. Even if it was just cleaning dishes in the lab, something like that to put on my resume, I knew the sooner that I started, the better increments I could go, right? Start at the bottom floor, then just kind of work your way up. And the sooner you start, the sooner the better jobs will come. As a result of that, again, by the time I left college, I had multiple internships. I had a lot of job experience. And yeah, some of it wasn't flashy, right? I mean, it was, a lot of fast food and dining hall, but it was years of work. And as a result, I took a job at Dow Chemical when I graduated, and I worked there for about 7 years. It was awesome. It was incredible. All of a sudden, I was a working professional in science, and what we cover in textbooks and homework assignments is nothing like the world of science that's out there. And I was just shocked. Science, as I found out at this stage, is global, right? Everyone does science all over the world, which means that you don't study, your classroom is not the microcosm anymore. What you're really looking at is, what does the world need? What is the world exploring? So I actually worked on some projects looking at alternative biofuels. So how can we perhaps use sugarcane, like you can see on the top right, that's a sugarcane field, to make a fuel to put in plastics or power cars and so forth that, are perhaps less harmful to the environment. And actually was on assignment for a year in China. However, that work is still covered by a non-disclosure agreement. So I just put some cute pictures of pandas from when I was at the zoo. But you don't want to look at all my biochemical pathways for that stuff. But the big point is that I was now in a job that was flying me around the world 6 months at a time, a year at a time, to go and see how science was being done and what other communities needed. So I was in Shanghai and Beijing. Is the Great Wall, as you can see here, a picture I took. And this is the view of, effectively across the river in Shanghai, where I lived for a year and learned Chinese and got to meet chemists and agriculture specialists and farmers and so forth, that were all there to kind of talk about science, to talk about ideas in science. And I was just blown away by what it means to be a scientist. That scope is just so big. And I'll kind of talk a little bit more about that. But just as a kind of like little brag sheet, these are places I've been on the dollar of companies. And I wish that I understood that better as a student, that because science is global, if you pursue science, but like literally, as they say, the world is your oyster, right? I guess that's not literally, metaphorically. But the world opens up to you. And I think that's incredible. Including, I think the most exciting one was down here at the very bottom center. You can see I got to go to Antarctica, covered in penguins as far as the eye can see. And this is where we're looking at ice core samples to see like how climate change has taken place over time. But again, I think about young Brandon or young students today. And if you said, what is science? You would say, you took 3 classes in high school, right? You took chemistry, biology, and physics. Which one of those 3 do you want to be, right? Or if you ask someone, do you want to be a scientist? They picture a certain stereotype, right? We picture kind of an old white guy in a lab coat with crazy hair mixing chemicals. That's not me. I don't work in a lab. I don't mix chemicals. I guess the hair could get cleaned up a little bit, but the point is, no one tells you just what you could be doing, that you could be doing ocean expeditions, that you could be an IP attorney protecting the inventions of these companies or institutions. We just hear doctor, nurse, right? And I think that's heartbreaking. I think there's so much out there, and it's really been exciting to kind of, that was my first foray into science. So that was kind of gig one. And, at this point, I'm still, youngish, right? Certainly days long past. By the time I was about 29, 30, I actually had a feeling that I wish I could have buried, but I couldn't. It just kept growing and growing. And I started to think about my excitement for science was more in talking about it the way we are doing now than it was doing it, right? My day-to-day was fun, and it was awesome to be able to travel and explore. And I'm so grateful to, to the companies that I've had to work for. But it just didn't make sense to me that I was there and you heard me say, I was so lucky, I was so lucky, I was so lucky, or this path changed, right? Why did it take so many winning lottery tickets for me to get to where I was, right? Why was it an immigrant kid who managed to get out of a bad school, who managed to get into a good school, who managed to get a scholarship, right? All of these things had to fall in place. And I wondered to myself, how many other kids could have been doing what I'm doing, but the cards just didn't fall that same way. It just seemed so unfair. And as a result, once I kind of started to think like that, I decided I wanted to be part of effectively lowering the bar for entry for kids like me. So I actually quit Dow, much to the amazement of several of my bosses, and I became a science teacher. So I've taught high school chemistry and physics. I've taught at the college level as well, as I'll show you guys. These are my high school kids from a couple years ago out in the valley. And these are my college kids from when I taught at Pasadena City College. And that's us in front of the rover. And this to me is so much more rewarding. So again, I love science, but I love giving science much more. And I want to circle back to this point in just a little bit, but this is really where things kind of get to our modern times, right? So as a result of teaching, one day I got effectively a phone call that said, you let the pendulum swing too far. If you don't want to be a scientist and you love teaching, but that's you still have the skills to do both, come to NASA, come to the Jet Propulsion Lab in Pasadena, and we'll let you do both. And that's what I do now. So now I get to have my foot on both roles. So in addition to teaching, which I still do, I teach 2 periods of AP Physics now in LA. I get to be part of this incredible science, like the landing of the Perseverance rover back in February of this year. Incredible. And here it is looking back at the Ingenuity helicopter, which has to this date flown 12 flights across Mars with such thin atmosphere, yet somehow able to fly. And the Perseverance rover is just starting to take some rock samples and look for signs of ancient life. I've managed to, I get to drive the rover very, very rarely. And it's not drive like this, right? Or like a joystick. It's all computer science. It's all code. And I got to take a couple pictures on Mars. So these probably not going to win any big awards, but they're my pictures on Mars. And I was really, really excited about them. So here's a picture of a rock. Is it an astounding rock? No, but again, was a big day for me. And here's a picture from what's called the HAZ cams, the cameras in the chest of the rover, looking at the arm as it takes that picture that I just showed you. So that was kind of cool. So now we have this rover driving around. It looks a little like this. And you can see, play this little video. We're not cruising. We're not Tokyo drifting around here, right? The rovers move very, very slowly, but they move very, very well. And you can see the 6 wheels allowed to kind of turn in place. And we have effectively a duplicate model here that allows for us to do testing here on our Earth, as the rover on Mars also traverses similar landscapes. So we can test a terrain here and then say, yeah, it's safe for the one on Mars. Really, really incredible work. And Mars is just one planet. That's just the next planet over. Think about all the exciting things that are taking place in the rest of our solar system as we look for alien oceans and exoplanets, planets that are around other stars that could be Earth-like, just like our home here. So, all of a sudden we've been thrown into the fact that science is in itself so big, so vast, that when you say, if you are a student interested in science, if you say to me, I want to be a chemist or I want to be a biologist, what you're telling me is you want one of a million jobs that are waiting for you when you finish college, right? It's not one job. It's just multitude, right? It's legions of jobs in that field. And it takes legions of people with different disciplines coming together to make these types of things happen. And that's what I was really, really thrilled to learn. So in closing, I want to tell you guys just a couple recap things, some fine points about how I got here. The first, again, what does it mean to be a scientist? Please learn what I learned in college as soon as you can. Dispel this notion of the stereotype. The idea that the guy on the left is the stereotype and not me on the right with my buddy, Mr. Lau, in a coffee shop in Shanghai, just talking about science. Like, this could be you. If you love the lab is yours for sure. If you don't, a million other jobs waiting for you. So there's just so many opportunities. And then the second thing I'll say is, because I didn't have family here, and if you are someone who's in a similar situation, find family, right? Find people who will take you in, find people that will take care of you, that you want to take care of. These, again, other than my sister in this photo, none of these people are my blood relatives, but I make sure to go see them every Thanksgiving if I can, or Christmas. these are people that adopted me, right? These are people that put a roof over my, my head when I had nothing. And maybe not all the time it's like a surrogate or adopted family. That's okay, because there are people like this, right? And I want you to know, I keep in touch with every single one of these individuals. This is us, my freshman year in high school. And so this is a solid 90s Brandon pick. And all of these people are still in my life, and I showed them this picture, and this is actually us a couple years ago. Still Packers fans, still going to the games, and still together. So, sometimes I'll even say, maybe you don't keep in touch, right? So this is a picture I found of us at the end of college. And I actually don't keep in touch with these guys anymore, but I miss them and I love them. And they took such good care of me and they got me through tough times. So, you're not alone. You don't have to be alone. And there are people who understand you and they're out there, and you will take care of each other, and it'll absolutely get you to where you need to be through some tough times. So I guess with that, I'll kind of say, I hope this is helpful. I know that there are a couple questions that you guys want to ask me. I'm happy to answer, but please, it's a marathon, and the game is bigger than you think in the most exciting way. So really, enjoy it, learn as much about it as you can, and get out there and just dig in, truly think about that long run goal, because it's better than you think. It really is. So I'm excited for you guys. I hope this is helpful, and I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Brandon. Your story is amazing. I mean, it's not very often we get to hear, all the struggles that someone goes through. And, and just to know that, you lost your parents at a young age and you're pretty much on your own. It's a lot of our kids, have gone through that or they're going through that same pathway right now. But I do have a few questions for you. One question is, as you look at your childhood and your years in elementary school, middle school, and high school, what advice do you have for our students? Because a lot of our students sometimes, they don't know that they can become, a NASA engineer, or that's part of STEAM. So what advice do you have for our students so they can pursue, a career in NASA or any STEM career? And the other question is, what advice do you have for parents and teachers so they can support their kids?
Yeah, superb question. Let me kind of take the student one first. Let me tell you, and I even have some like backup slides I'll share. In a word, it's hustle, right? If you are a student, every time you say, I don't want to go further, is a time another student might be, right? I look at it the same kind of way you think about like all the people that ever want to be like a pro athlete. It's no different than in science, right? When someone is training and you're not, that person has a better chance than you, right? And because of who we are and our backgrounds, certainly me growing up, I didn't have tutors, I didn't have a car, I couldn't drive to work, I had to walk or bike. So there's inequity in place for sure. But if you are a student in a situation like I was in my youth, you can turn those disadvantages into advantages, truly. And it's not fair and it's not easy, but you come out so much better, so much stronger than the kids that have that silver spoon. So for example, I mentioned that when I was working, by the time I left college, my resume was spectacular, right? Why is that? Because I needed to eat, right? I wasn't doing it to impress anyone, but like my work experience was blowing away other teenagers, right? Because they were saying, I don't need to work, I'm just going to sit and study. They had better grades than me, no question. They had better grades than me, but they were a number. They were a GPA and maybe a test score, right? You can be so much more than that because your hustle, right? What you do to survive really translates later on into strength. So I think students, really dig in, get started, kind of like, work on how you can, it's kind of silly to say, but like work on your brand, right? How do you turn who you are into something that is desirable? And no kid that has everything handed to them will ever know what you do about multitasking, right? About scheduling, time management, stuff like that. If you're the kind of person that needs to, help your family cook, that you have to, help get your little sister, your little brother to school, stuff like that. Think about when you have homework, right? When you have college classes, and those kids have never had to do multiple things at once. They never had to juggle responsibilities. You have. So you do have legs up in that way, I'm sorry, I know I'm so chatty, but for teachers, I'll say, please, something that I learned very quick, and let me show you guys a couple slides. I kind of mentioned in a few ways that, like, you want kids to understand what's out there. I was the worst field trips ever in teaching, ever. Because my field trip, this is my favorite one I ever did. I took my first year kids when I was teaching in Houston, Texas. I took them to Rice University, and we sat in college classes. That was their field trip. This is us sitting in organic chemistry, sophomore chemistry class in college. That was their day off, was go learning more chemistry. Why do I do this? I want them to see as soon as possible what the world of college looks like versus high school. Because high school, as I said, does not prepare you at all for college, certainly not for work, right? It is not the same. If you are at a school where kids are wearing uniforms and they have to stand outside of a door before they can come in, this does not exist in college, right? You can come wearing your gym jams and your flip-flops and whatever, right? So understanding what's really happening at college can give kids a little bit of a leg up on that transition, right? And then internships, find things for them to do, please. There's so many programs in STEM and STEAM to get your kids started. This was us working on an internship at MIT. My sophomores, my first year, all have MIT on their resume their sophomore year in college, in high school. That's incredible, right? And then this is like my dream team, my originals, the best students I ever had in my life. This is girls in engineering summer camp at the University of Houston. And they went and did that for a couple of weeks. Again, they got to see science. They got to put science on their resume. And so I'm telling you, teachers, please just look on the internet, help kids find some resources, get the ball rolling, because it'll make a huge, huge difference.
Thank you so much, Brandon. Yeah, that's an incredible STEAM journey that you shared with us. And I think, I think it's so important to give our students a little window and an insight to, not just your current, job and your current career, but actually how you got there. Because I think that's where most of our students are at right now. And of course, they need to be able to have that hope to be able to see that, you know what, I can see myself in Brandon's, past history. And so if he was able to get out of those situations, then I can do that as well. And you gave him those little tips, and that, again, you gave him that little hope to be able to accomplish that. So thank you.
So I want to thank everyone who's watching our STEAM Bites, and I hope you will join us next time for the next STEAM Bites. So thank you, Brandon, and hopefully we'll see you at NASA.
Awesome.
Take care,
Thank you, guys.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.